It's 7 o'clock. We have a quorum, so we'll call the meeting to order. First meeting topic on the agenda is to approve the minutes from last meeting. Everybody had an opportunity to review them via the email attachments. Everybody okay with it? Okay, all right.
I know I can approve it even though I wasn't there, but I'll abstain because I wasn't.
Yes, you
No, that's a good point.
I'm allowed, I guess, now to approve minutes even if you weren't there, but.
Yeah, I think technically you can, but you certainly can
But I'll abstain.
I was gonna say, because then we won't have a quorum.
Well, okay, so
Yeah.
I approve them.
Okay.
I think
You've read them and.
This was the issue last time.
I think I listened to the last 30 seconds.
Yes,
We can proceed.
And anybody who did miss the last meeting, it was a great summary from Steve Olvani, and it is on Vimeo, so it's a good summary of the projects that are coming on board for 2020 and some of the other topics that are, going to be things that I think we should pay attention to. So when you have a minute, take a minute to review. And also a quick thank you to Mike for giving us the time stamp on the Vimeo for the the budget process. We know we knew we're right to go. And just at that, we're just going to turn it over to Jeremy to give us an overview of planning and zoning. We're early days on the budget, but it's nice to stay on top of things earlier, and any concerns to raise earlier rather than later after some of these approval processes have happened.
Moving along behind the scenes, well, not really, it's right on camera. Board of Selectmen are moving along, but I did watch that meeting where Steve Olvani was there speaking with you about the major projects. I can certainly answer any questions, but you can see firsthand they're all moving along, and this is just the start of what we're likely to see for a 2 or 3 or even a 4-year time period where a lot of the commercial districts in Darien will be under construction, but there'll be all new buildings and all new uses coming in. It's going to be very exciting, but we have to go through this construction phase first, and we'll be better off in the long run because of it. So I can tell you about the budget. If you need copies of what I emailed out, I can certainly pass them out.
I'll take one, Jeremy.
I
Pass
did
them
not
around.
get that, okay.
I have some other copies too if anybody needs them.
Yep, the date at the bottom is February 7th, so.
I've got it.
This was helpful too.
And I'll kind of walk you through it a little bit. Basically, what we do, you may be familiar with the Planning and Zoning Department. There's 7 staff people. We provide staff support for 4 local land use boards: Planning and Zoning Commission, Environmental Protection Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals, and Architecture Review Board, who meet on various evenings throughout this building to process various applications. In addition, day-to-day short-term application planning, submit building permit, zoning permit for your house. We'll review it, send it to building, work hand in hand with them, work with a lot of brokers who are asking questions about what can I do with my property, all those types of questions. So it's certainly an interesting office, always a lot going on. Spring is usually our busiest time period, but this year we have the added work for those 3 major projects where we're meeting with the developers. We've met with the construction companies, the people who are actually out there building it. We're talking about minor changes to the plans. We're talking about what permits they need to get through this process. So this year we have that extra work to get those projects through the system with, as you probably heard, as little disruption to the community as possible. Trying to make sure that the sidewalks are covered so they're still safe and usable for people for multiple years. Making sure that truck traffic doesn't really become a problem for people. So again, trying to guide those projects through will be a new facet that we'll have to deal with this year. So,
Do you think you'll be adequately manned and that you have the manpower?
Right, I've spoken to the first selectman and town administrator and said, look, what we have is great, that should be fine. Building department also will be working with us. They do have what they call special inspections, kind of a third-party review, which is the building official is called in, kind of an outside person at the applicant's expense to help review the plans. So there's certainly that ability to help make things go that much smoother.
Yep, to handle the bottleneck.
Right,
Valve.
right.
Okay.
So we'll talk a
join
little bit
us.
about the budget. You can see the bottom line is there's not really much of a change. And the concepts are the same, except what we're trying to do is really use technology to our advantage, and that's the broad scope. Times have changed, the way people's expectations have changed. When you go online to purchase a train ticket or a movie ticket or purchase something on Amazon, the expectations now is you just log in, you do your business, you enter your credit card, and magically things just move along. The old way of doing things is gathering your hard copy papers, dropping it on someone's desk, wandering to town hall, hoping town hall's open. We're in this process from the old way of doing things to a new way of doing things. We're trying to manage our information accordingly. So for example, one thing we've started over the past couple of years is scanning all of our applications. The building department has scanned all their plans. So if you're interested in buying a property, you can go in the computers in the hallway outside our office and do whatever research you want. If you're looking at multiple properties, you can do the same thing. Title searchers can just come in, versus coming to the counter, asking people to, can you pull these files? Can you help me copy these files? And put the files back. It was very person sensitive, a lot of time and effort copying, touching paper, whereas folks who just want to come in, poke around, do their thing. So having those computers outside our office with all the paperwork for planning and zoning and building has been a huge success. Rave reviews from the public, people like yourselves who can come in, do research without bothering anyone. You can sit there as long as you like. You can look at various plans, things are, and while I'm at it, I'll look at this without feeling like you're a burden on someone, and also flexibility that way.
Can you do that online as well?
You can't do it online, it's just that the computers, the terminals outside, there's always that fine balance, and I'm glad you brought that up. How much information does the town put online about people's houses and things like that?
Yeah.
So I know the assessor has spent a lot of time trying to find that right balance of public information that should be out there and other information that, if people really want it, they need to come to town hall. Especially when you get floor plans of public buildings and things like that. It's always a sensitive thing.
I'm curious, do you log who's looking at what house?
We do not.
Okay.
It's all public stuff, so if you're interested in buying a house, this way you don't have to, you can just log on, look at the house, or see what was approved for your house, or whatever it is, what applications have been approved for whatever. So a lot of it's brokers, title searchers, huge benefit to them, saves them a lot of time and effort, and saves staff time and effort, again, as we try to be more efficient. So when we talk about scanning, now we're in the rhythm of every year, once or twice a year, we ship out our documents to a company that scans them all, organizes them on a computer so that we can then search, find the information. And so, again, we're trying to manage that information, start new processes to get in that rhythm, which would allow better access from the public. Related to that is what we've talked here I'll jump to the bottom, the City View conversion, which is the big capital request. City View is the software we now use in the Planning and Zoning Office and Building Department and Fire Marshal's Office and Health, but basically mostly Planning and Zoning and Building to manage the permit information. So the first thing people, when they submit their permit, will enter it in the computer. This allows our department to track it. It allows the building official to track it with all the associated inspections, and allows us to build a database of information and permits on each property. We bought, I think Carolyn, you said about 12 years ago, we bought that software. It served us very well. But what we found is really the next step to build off that is really online permitting. As I referenced earlier, the desire for people to not have to come to town hall with all the paperwork and applications. The goal, and some communities are already doing it, is have that be able to be done online, where you can just, at your leisure, whatever it is, evening, nights, weekends, you type in the information, address, name, what are you doing, email the plans over, scan the plans over, pay by credit card, done. You don't have to take time off work to come to town hall, any of that, all electronic. We get it up, because think about it, we're scanning it anyways. So now all we're doing is getting hard copy and scanning. So now we're focusing on getting that aspect of everything online. See more and more of those permits. So that's what, by changing the software. Now, we have started in on it with CityView, and as part of that process, we realized there's much better software out there. We visited a number of communities, talked to them and said, you know what, there's better systems out there that really have taken that next step. That they all manage the data just fine, but the software program we're looking at really does a good job at online permitting, which is really where we need to go.
What
with
is the
this.
new system, Jeremy?
It's called Viewpoint, and we did see it firsthand in Orange, and they raved about it. We called numerous communities, and they said, you know what, it's a good package. We're quite pleased with its capabilities, how it runs online permitting, and how it handles information.
And it's a subscription model?
Yeah, that's the way software is running these days. What you find is, you know, you have software maintenance, which is an annual fee, and basically, the big thing we have this year is taking the data from this one software package, converting it, setting up the new software with various
Mapping it and everything, yeah.
forms and reports for each of the departments, and getting everyone up and running. So the belief is, if this gets approved in the budget, July 1, 2020, we'll start in on that process over the summer, and thus be up and running in 6 to 8 months.
And you phase out CityView?
Exactly. So I think it's going to be great, because there's a lot of people that come to our office that really don't need to. There's better ways to do that process. So what you'll see in this budget is a lot of money related to that.
So when you say CityView conversion, is that just the price for converting to the new software? What about,
Right.
what's the annual price
Right,
for
and
the
then-
new software?
Right, so the software maintenance and support, which is up here in the third from the bottom, includes the other various softwares that we use. It's not just this one. And the first year, we will have this extra, because we're going to need CityView running for at least the first 6 months. So we need to pay software maintenance and
Yeah.
support on that, while at the same time paying this new vendor as well. And then in next year's budget, you won't see the CityView maintenance and
So in the
support.
operating cost basis, what is the cost of CityView run rate versus what Viewpoint is run rate? How much more is Viewpoint than what we're paying now?
Annually?
Yeah, so forgetting the
Oh, for the
conversion, it's a
maintenance.
one-time thing, the
Right.
annual.
For the maintenance, it's, I want to say less, but I can't recall
All
how
right,
much.
so it's plus or minus, the same.
Yeah, basically, let's assume the same. So from that standpoint, what we believe we're getting is a better software package for this.
For
Once you
about
do
the
the,
same.
once you do the conversion, which is
Yeah, you
painful.
pay the
Yeah,
one pound,
yeah,
yep.
yeah.
Right, so it's a painful process, but we,
Yeah.
you know, after talking with multiple departments, again, that's the goal here, is having multiple departments talk to each other and share information. And so for example, now when we get a zoning or building permit application, the software allows us to email directly, Health Department, hey, Health, are you okay with this? Do they need a septic approval, anything else? Fire Marshal, have you seen the plans? So kind of bringing all the departments together up front. So keep these permits moving along. And that's
And do you
important to
see
us.
any particular challenges of going through this conversion process in the midst of all of these
Project.
commercial
You know, it's
projects
funny.
going on? Drinking from a fire hose, are we?
Right.
Yeah.
We have a very seasonal business, which is very interesting to me, that this time of year, and it's also weather dependent, so this time of year, pretty quiet. It picks up in March, April, May, permits go up, June, July, and then August, when everyone goes away on vacation, things quiet down. Back to school, a little busier, and so there's a whole rhythm. November, December, also very quiet. So what we're hoping to do, start this in July, hit those 2 very quiet months of August and December, that we're able to spend time with this. You're right, that we have these other big projects going on, there'll be other new things going on. There is no perfect time, and we
Yep.
talked about that with
Yep.
the building official. He said, I realize there's no good time. You got Oxford School coming, you got the 3 projects, you got some other things in the hopper, but he said, if we don't do it now, we're just postponing the inevitable, and there's always going to be new projects coming online. So we're aware of what we want, we've seen it, we have the support of the various employees, And the Board of Selectmen are supportive, so there's no sense postponing it.
Okay.
So it's a good question, though.
Is Orange the only community that you
No,
looked
there
at?
were so many, and it's funny because Cityview really, we are, I believe, at this point, the last community in Connecticut that uses
Oh.
Cityview. A lot more use Viewpoint.
Okay.
So one of the secretaries in the building department called 15 to 20 different communities throughout the state. Fairfield County, outside. We visited Orange because, number one, they invited us, and number two, that it's fairly close by. But there are other communities that use it, that gave us the confidence that, look, not all these communities are going to be wrong. A lot of them are in the Hartford area, but just after she spoke to them, she said, look, not, 20 communities aren't wrong. We've seen how they process online permitting, and they did a good job with that. So we were impressed. So I'm excited about getting to that point. Going through the process is tough, but we'll get there. I'm optimistic on that. So I wanted to talk about that first and foremost, because it really drives a lot of what we do, the scanning, the software conversion. But we'll talk about, basically the rest of the budget is uneventful. We're not asking for any new staff. Every year we do get a summer intern. Last year our summer intern was a grad student from UMass Amherst. He was excellent. He's able not only to do some of the basics, copying, filing, organizing, covering the phones, whatever it is, but he was able to do some high-level work for data gathering, managing data, so it's a big advantage, organizing some of these materials to be scanned. So it's really an advantage to have someone who's capable and who's excited about coming to work and doing a great job at a very low rate of pay, but they're able to help us out greatly doing a lot of the work that might not get done or might get postponed.
What's the affordable housing plan?
Well, we'll talk about that. There is a state statute passed a few years ago, which requires communities every 5 years to write up an affordable housing plan. It's statute 8-30J. And that was passed about 3 years ago. So last year I put that in the budget, and it was cut out of the budget because at that point the town said, we don't even know what the state's looking for. The legislature just said, you need a plan every 5 years. Like, well, what does that mean? Does that mean on the back of a napkin? Does that mean report this big? Is it policy? Is it number? What do you, so the state, so every year we put it, so in this year we put it in the budget because we know we have to do it by, I think it's 2022. The state just now is starting to give guidance. They said their guidance will be ready in a few months in terms of what they're looking for an affordable housing plan, what they would consider that to be. So we put in an amount with the assumption that we're going to, at a staff, be able to gather, organize, collate data and information. So if we bring in an outside consultant, a lot of their questions will be, what do you have now? Where is it? Tell me about the housing authority properties. Tell me about what you've constructed in the past few years. Tell me about, and we've started some of the data gathering, organizing to kind of offset those costs, possibly offset some of the research. So we believe that by working with the consultant, that's an appropriate amount of money. Of course, it depends what the state comes back with. We don't know, but we do know that the plan has to be done by 2022. It's the 2020, 2021 budget. So we don't want to give ourselves 1 month to do it. But so we did put money in with the expectation, again, if we start, even if we don't start in July of 2020, let's say we start a year from now, February 2021, and it takes 6 to 9 months to work on such a plan, or a year. Boom, 2022 is already there.
Yeah.
So by putting the money in, even if we don't spend it till the second half of the fiscal year, it's there, we're ready to go, we're ready to pull the trigger, get the plan started. But we're waiting to see what the state comes back with in terms of what they're looking for. Because it was such a, but that's the type of legislation you get sometimes where the legislature says you have to do something. Where do you want us to begin? very few communities have done theirs. I think there's only 2 or 3 in the state that I'm aware of. And so I
Best
think,
to only have to do it once and not over.
Right.
well, every 5 years is the
But-
problem.
But,
Do it the first time.
but do it
Yeah.
the first time.
Then you're just updating it.
Yeah. and wait.
Right. So it'll be interesting to see what they come back with, what type of document they're looking for, whether it's policy-based, whether it's data-based, whether it's results-based. I guess we'll see. We'll see what comes up with. And the other thing, because there's so few done, you can't say, oh, let me take the
Right.
Westport or the Wilton or New Canaan and see what they did. Really, I think I've seen Essex and Salisbury.
It's every 5 years, so did you do it 5 years?
Well, the law started in 2017.
Oh, I see.
So this will be the first wave, and of course, the question is, if there's 169 communities, and they're all doing these reports.
You're going to have a hard time finding a consultant, right?
Right. Hard,
And they're
but
all going to do
also,
them, they're all going to do them between 2021 and 2022.
Right.
exactly right. So we did whisper in one of the consultants' ears, hey, we're asking now.
Yeah.
But also, if the state gets 169 reports all at once, that will be very interesting to see whether they review them, comment on them. There's no requirement for them to.
There's no action.
There's no action. It's just that the only action is that the towns do
They
them.
have to do them.
And then, as you said, update them every 5 years after that. So it's kind of something new, but I think it'll be interesting, and we've started some of the data gathering and organizing, because in anticipation of whoever works on it, whether it's this year or next year, that information will be helpful to them to understand some of the recent things the town has done, some of the changes, some of the new construction, where certain types of units are, condominiums, market rate, deed restricted affordable, understand some of the zoning changes which have occurred. So as we gather that information, I think it's important, and I'm sure it'll end up in the report either directly or indirectly. So we've been starting on that. The last capital project, which I'll talk about, is a new replacement plotter. Plotter is basically a large format printer up in our office, which allows us to print big wall-size maps. The current one's about 8 or 9 years old. Has its days, good days and bad days. I think it might be okay. In fact, I told the town administrator, look, why don't I put it in the budget? I'll circle back with you in March, April. We'll kind of take its temperature of the machine, kind of see if it's okay. If it's still chugging along,
It's kind of like that old furnace in the basement.
bingo, that's exactly what it is.
Service it one more time.
Yeah, so.
I think we can go one more year.
She's-
Get another year out of it.
So she said that. She said, you know what, let's circle back to me in March. If we cut it out of the budget, of course, that's what contingency's for anyways.
Right.
Guarantee
Right.
it breaks.
Right, so it's always, so that's something that we put in, and whether it stays in the budget, who knows? But it is getting on in years by computer technology. In fact, I just noticed 206 just got new cameras.
Yeah.
So talk about new technology, yeah?
We're hopefully we're replacing, it's still the same one from 12 years ago where we're bicycling DVDs, which is just archaic.
Yeah, so technology changes. Other things in the budget are pretty uneventful in terms of, we've covered software maintenance and support. We talked a little bit about scanning. The reason there's a cut in that line item is in the past year and a half, we've seen that the amount of paper and plans and documents that we sent out to be scanned, that's pretty much what it's come in at. So we didn't need the full 5,000. So we said, you know what, we can do the same job at less cost, so let's put less money in the budget.
You said last year one of the wild cards in your budget was advertising because of the consolidation of the
Absolutely.
newspapers and the requirement. Is that just a continuation of the higher number that you had to absorb last year with the mergers? and
Exactly, that's a good point, Mike. That right now, Darien is a one newspaper town, and that newspaper, we're at their mercy because our legal notices have to be published in a newspaper of stature in a community. Well, we've looked, and the Darien Times, although more expensive than what used to be the Darien News,
They bought them.
they bought them out, is less expensive than the Advocate or the Norwalk Hour. So maybe I shouldn't say that on camera, but basically, we're at their mercy, and we're still using them. Whether the state statute changes in the future to not require that, we hear rumblings every now and then. Usually what happens is the newspapers lobby as well, and they say,
Yeah.
look, if you take out the legal notices, we're sunk. You've killed an industry. So they're sensitive to that. So I think we'll continue to use that as a resource.
It just stabilized at a higher number.
It's stabilized at a higher number.
So Jeremy, is there any, if you had a magic wand and you could make your department run as efficient as possible, is there anything that would be in this budget that is not?
It's a good question. You know what? I think what we have in here relative to the scanning.
Or you see in
and
the
software-
future, any technology?
Yeah, the technology really is going to be, as we see, we don't want to be too far out on the cutting edge relative to everyone else. So usually we let other communities kind of trail ahead and then kind of follow close behind once we get a certainty as to what they're doing works. I think what we're going to see in the future is a lot more submittals digitally via email. And it's not only the permitting, but it's the applications put together for construction projects. We'll see a lot more of those. Right now, on any random day, you might see people walking in with boxes of paper. You know, each commission member gets a hard copy of the plans, the drainage report, the traffic report, the architecturals.
Yeah.
Oh, and, you know, these poor commission members every week get stacks of paper. Well, some communities have started doing that more digitally, is email, discs, flash drives, whatever it is, such that you're not going through all the paper. It's easier to manage. It takes some getting used to. Some people love it. Some people say, look, I'm a paper guy. I want to flip the plans. But that's eventually where the business is going, is handled on a big screen. Eventually there won't be podiums. It'll be screens where people click through and you can look at the plan, zoom in, zoom out. I've seen a couple construction trailers where the guys in the trailer have tables like this, but they're basically tables with the monitors built into them, and the monitors up on the wall. So you can have plans on one and their Gantt charts on the other showing the various parts. So that's, little by little, that's where we're going, is managing information electronically. Email, huge. Didn't used to be that. Obviously, I worked before there was email. Whole different dynamic. So baby steps working towards that with the scanning of information, the online permitting, which allows us to start gathering information and managing information electronically with the long-range thinking that submittals may no longer be on paper, or maybe we get one copy, everyone else gets electronic. The board members and commission members get everything electronically. I know they've talked about that for RTM packets as a possibility in the future, is just, here's your email, here's your packet. Or I think some towns give everyone either Chromebooks or smart pads or whatever is in vogue at the time to allow people to manage information, manage paper.
Is there, because I don't see it here, but maybe it's in the town sort of IT budget for archival systems and security for all these things that are going to be, you know, that are scanned and stored somewhere and backup drives, and because I assume that's just all the town stuff goes in the one
Absolutely correct.
off-site storage server,
Right.
or you
Right,
know.
the way the IT budget works is the town contracts with the Board of Ed. The Board of Ed has, at Leroy Avenue, if you haven't been in the building, it's, I'll call it 4 or 5 guys there all the time. They have one person in this building managing the networks, the servers, software maintenance and support. Hey, Windows isn't starting up today, whatever it is. They are also responsible for backups.
Right.
Our systems, the Board of Ed systems. So for example, I say, I lost the file, or I need the backup from this day. They'll go into their servers, some of which are here, some of which are at Leroy, some are in the cloud, and dig that stuff out. They are responsible for upgrades as well. So as the town goes from whatever, Windows 9 to Windows 10, their job is to make sure everyone is.
I'm just wondering if they need more budget.
Well,
like with everything moving more towards being, you know,
right.
online.
I think there's a line item somewhere in that big budget book,
Right.
which talks about IT, and again, the town contracts for having a person who kind of organizes, coordinates out of that budget, and the advantage is it's all done locally. So that works out. It's a model that seems to have gone very well, although what you will hear is the town is currently working on what they're calling a technology assessment. They've hired Blum Shapiro. I don't know too much more other than that.
Jeremy, can you also talk at all about what you anticipate as properties, large parcels in town get demolished, and we no longer can substantiate collecting revenue on a building that's no longer in existence? There's going to be a large parcels throughout our town that are basically land, undeveloped land, as these projects are evolving. How does the affect the budget?
I've spoken to the assessor a
As
little
far
bit
as the
about that. I know
assessments
the
on
Board of
building.
Selectmen has been concerned about that, and he's talked about that at recent department heads meetings in terms of, if you think of, let's talk the Roden Heights Shopping Center, which is the two buildings. The front building would be Darien Donut to the post office, and then the other building, which is Fabricare, what used to be Barrett Bookstore, Tunics, Heights Pizza, that second building. So if you think about it, those buildings were built in the 50s. I wasn't here then, but they certainly were not Class A space.
Yep.
The value of those properties really is in the land. So the assessor did have a value on those, and that value will disappear.
Yep.
So I'm sure the property owners this year, their value, the land will probably be the same, or
Yep.
maybe a little
Yep.
more. The buildings will drop down, and then the buildings will go back up and surpass where they were.
Far surpass it.
Far surpass it, exactly. So what we'll get is a slight drop this year,
Yep.
and then the benefit will be in 3 years from now,
Yep.
when those buildings are all done, because you'll not only have the commercial base that was there, and it will be a higher quality, but you also have the 2 stories of residential above, and there's value in that. So I think that the assessor, based on the grand list, has done the calculations.
Yeah.
The Board of Finance has also looked at that question in terms of revenue, personal property, and trying to figure out such that they're
Forecasting it properly.
Bingo, because that's what they're doing. But you're right, at Federal Realty, Roden Heights Shopping, and downtown, the value of those properties is in the land. So, true, we're losing Stop and Shop. That building's been vacant since December 18th or whatever. The value will drop, but as fast as you can see, that the values will go back up and surpass. So you're right, there's this little window for a year where you might lose a couple $1 million off the tax base temporarily.
And I imagine the permit revenue is going to be quite different over these next 3 years.
You're gonna see
from
some
the level of
aberrations.
Permitting revenue that we're going to be collecting for these projects. And then
It's very much, the closest thing I can recall to that is when Avalon was built in about 2000,
Yeah.
2001, the number of, because that was 189 units. So you could see the number of building permits shot up for a year and a half, and then went back down to normal levels because you're building so many units all at once. So here, I know that there's a lot of, not so much revenue at the planning and zoning, but more so at the building department, because their revenues, their fees are based on the value of the work, $16 per thousand or whatever it is. So if you think of how many millions dollars of value, and you multiply it by 0.16, and you do a little math, that the fees that they're paying for their inspections and certifications and reviews will help subsidize the offsets in the grand list.
Your bump would come if there's an increase in the residential real estate, so that there are more people renovating because there aren't any lots to build on anymore.
It's interesting, we did raise our fees via the RTM, I think it was last year or 2 years ago, to better reflect some of the out-of-pocket costs we have. But I'd say the permitting overall, generally, for getting these big projects is steady. I wouldn't say it's higher than last year or lower. It's pretty much right where we are in terms of January, February, that
I bet if you tracked it, it would track back to the real estate sales.
what we do see is real estate sales is a pretty good indicator, because what happens when people buy a house, they want to do something to it.
Right.
They don't buy, very few people buy as is, just move in and be done with it. You're then finishing the basement, or fixing up the bathroom, or bumping out the back. Sometimes people are doing it before they move in. So it's a good indicator when a house is on the market, that maybe within a year, we're likely to see a building permit for that house. Somehow, some way, they want to do something.
We're going to have the expiration of the moratorium coming up in October.
That's correct.
Do you anticipate any permits coming or
Well,
applications
it's
coming?
funny because Wilton.
Not permits, I'll say applications coming
Right.
through.
Wilton had a 4-year moratorium as well. Theirs just expired, and within a month or two after it expired, they did see an 8-30G, an affordable housing application, come in for Wilton for 17 units. It would not surprise us, certainly after October, to see applications start coming in. We're not sure for where, certainly. No one has met with us and said, hey, what do you think? We're trying to work it out. We have spoken to people through the past 4 years who want to do certain things to their property that the zoning doesn't allow. We said, well, the zoning doesn't allow it. We do not suspect that the commission would want to change this property in the way you've described it, for whatever. So I don't know what lies in store past October.
Okay.
It should be interesting. I mean, other towns have seen, as soon as the moratorium's over, applications start coming in.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
The bridge project all the way down.
By Giovanni's.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you said this, because that was going to be my
Okay.
question.
I'm sorry if I'm not read up on this properly, but A, how long is it going to take? And B, I know that's a hard question to answer, but B, is Brookside going to be cut off, or is that just a temporary sidewalk?
It's temporary.
Okay.
I don't know a lot about the project. I do know that it was on the drawing board for quite a while. We worked with the owners of Giovanni's for quite a while, and they were hoping that the DOT would get it moved along, because it certainly is right in front of their business.
Well, it's amazing how we can swap out a bridge over 95 in 2 weekends. And in a year and a half, we can't get this bridge, or a year, maybe.
So far.
So far. We can't get this bridge done.
And certainly,
amazing.
the folks at Giovanni's had the same comments to DOT.
Did they really?
Because they're like, wait a minute, why do we have to narrow it and impact the people on
Yeah.
Brookside Drive and Anthony Lane and
With the
people
barbecue
on-
restaurant.
Right,
And,
so
yeah.
certainly there's some impacts. We tried to minimize those the best we could. Brookside, everything will go back to normal when it's done, but I don't know when that would be. I wish I could give you a date.
Yeah.
It's totally a state project.
I'm going to drive there today,
Yeah.
and it's very different from the last time I was there.
Yeah.
And started
It was
to
messy
wonder,
tonight.
what is going on?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's too bad. But Steve gave you a good update. I'm trying to think of other projects he might not have covered. The Royal at Darien, which is Old Town Hall
Yep.
Homes,
Covered.
that summer, fall this year, depending on what's going on.
What is the electric bill there? Those lights are on.
I know.
All the lights,
Yeah.
all night
I
long,
know.
every night.
You would know, you're right there.
There.
Yeah.
Why is
I don't
that?
know why they do that, whether it's security
Safety, I'm
sure.
or safety.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
unfinished,
don't know.
unfinished construction site, you
Yeah.
want the lights on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, who pays them out. That's a good
Do you know when the
question.
application
Yeah, you walk
process will
around.
start for that?
Kids.
That's done, the selectmen have
Oh, I heard
asked,
it hadn't. Okay.
and the
Just read about it.
Really?
JHM and Imagineers have talked to the selectmen's office about that process. But if you know anyone, have them call the selectmen's office, and they can guide them through the best they can. There's going to be a very small window, obviously great demand. What we suspect is the Royal at Darien is 55 and over or disabled and income restricted. So you have to meet those criteria. So there's, what they've said to people is, we'll take your name in it, but these are the criteria you need to meet. So definitely, if you're aware of anyone, have them go to the selectman's office very, very soon.
1 bedroom or 1 and 2 bedrooms?
There is almost all one bedroom there,
Okay.
55 units total.
Any update on the status of Pemberton 16 and the appeal that they have set
There is
forth?
no change in that. That was a request to eliminate or modify the deed restriction, limiting it
On the
to
age.
elderly, 62 and over. Planning and Zoning Commission denied that request. That is now going to court.
Which
That
property
does
was
not
that?
sound
The corner of,
elderly.
the corner of
Corner,
Leroy
yeah.
and West.
Yep.
It's getting a little close.
In Baywater's April,
Yeah, David Genovese has still got to work, certainly he's talked to me as recently as last Thursday or Friday about starting, I'll call it Phase 1, which is the east side of Corbin Drive, which is the gas station, Mathnasium, Tibbetts Real Estate, that whole...
in that White House.
The White House.
Right. And he's got some other things to do in the meantime, rearrange a few tenants. He's got to work with those property owners. David Genovese does not own those properties, so he's got to coordinate with them. He's got to find new spaces for those tenants who are there. Demolish the buildings, including a gas station, which is a little trickier than demolishing a law office. So I think he's looking to get started in March, April, and work on that side first. He's got some things in mind about moving certain tenants in certain places.
I thought I read where he had to do where the shoemaker is and for the staging area, that was going to go with the same demolished at the
Yep,
same
the
time.
shoemaker has moved out or is about to move out. And so David's trying to also, at the same time, manage his space carefully for staging, equipment, materials, contractor parking. So he's got to find tenants, new places, and it's kind of musical chairs. There is not a lot of commercial available space now in Darien. So to find a space for someone to move.
When we had the guy for the economic development director from Stanford, and they talked about the group of 5, which was Greenwich, Stamford, Norwalk, Westport, and Darien isn't in that group. Is that because we don't have enough business property, or is it because we just weren't included in that group?
I don't know the answer. I've never even heard of the group.
When corporations move, they meet with them together to talk about what are the housing options. But it was Greenwich, Stamford, Norwalk, Westport, and I can't remember what the 5th town was.
Fairfield.
Was it Fairfield?
I think it's-
Yeah, but we were the only one along there that wasn't in it, but I never got a
Maybe
good
it's just
answer.
size, maybe it's just.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was because we
That
just didn't have
part was-
enough business property, or...
Well, I think part of it is, if you look at Stanford and Norwalk, they have a lot of big spaces, which Darien doesn't really have. We have a lot of great small spaces that have been recently renovated, but we don't have a lot of really big spaces. So if someone says, I need 80,000 square feet or 50,000, it's just not available. There's not a lot of big properties. So for better, I don't know if that's better or worse, but we don't have that kind of Norwalk or Stanford type supply to offer to people.
All right. Jeremy, thank you so much.
Anytime, anytime.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank
Sure
you.
thing. We'll catch up with you all soon.
Good night.
Okay.
Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
All right. Terrific. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Amy.
All right.
I have